Yeah, there's a couple of things that we use to drive ourselves. One of them is having hard problems, going after something that hasn't been done before, kind of pushing the technology edge of things. That hard challenge kind of motivates our workforce, and our workforce is both internal and outside in industry as well. So that huge motivation factor of doing something difficult and rewarding. The other side of it is how do we seek solutions that are outside of our normal actors, the normal people we associate with. So going outside of our normal, like large contractors that we work with, reaching out to small businesses, academia, even the public at large, and trying to find new sources of solutions to solve our problems. So failure is an important option in things. So everybody likes to say NASA, you can't fail, failure's not an option. That's the exact wrong culture we try to actually strive for. Obviously, when the final flight, when we go to launch humans into space, and on a launch vehicle or rocket going somewhere, we don't want to fail then. But in order to not fail then, we got to step back as we develop the technologies, figure out where are the failure points and how far can you push something before it actually breaks. If you go and test something and it never breaks, you don't know when it will break. So you actually have to push things to failure to figure out where that edge is, so that when you're actually executing a mission, say a rocket launch or something else, and something doesn't go quite as planned and you need to push the performance one way or another, you know where it's going to break, so you have that margin for future, for the performance that you have at the time. So, and then in addition to that, the other failure mode that you look at is when you're developing technologies, they have these classic S-curves of like performance. And you do a development, you get a performance out of it, and you kind of plateau out. When you fail though, it gives you an opportunity to jump from one S-curve of development to the next. And you actually get a higher performance level. And you can actually accelerate technology development through that failure. Yeah, so when you take a complex problem, I have an expertise in systems engineering. So how do you decompose a problem into small, reasonable chunks of data that you need? So when you look at the small problems that you're trying to solve, then you can compartmentalize them and send them off to different teams. You make it much more manageable. You can send this piece out to an academic institution, this piece out to an internal team, another piece out to an industry partner. And if you think about that, you can make the complex problem just a series of small, hard problems and go to solve that. So the art of decomposing a difficult problem that you have is actually more important than even the problem-solving skills sometimes. So that's how we go about doing that, is putting things into small chunks of data, small chunks of problems, and actually then farming out to a large group of people. NASA, we kind of refer to it as you're like a conductor of an orchestra. You're not really leading every single component of it. Every single organization or every single part of solving the problem is its own independent entity, and you can be a conductor of that, and hopefully all the pieces come together for you. But you're not really in control of the entire problem, because these are complex problems that we deal with. Yeah, so everything we do, whether we test a system, a rocket engine, or test a landing type system, or gather scientific data, data is kind of at the core of how we make decisions. So we're engineers. So you take emotional response out of things, and you make decisions based on the data at hand, whether it's data in testing or actually in an operational standpoint. That data-driven piece is at the core of what NASA does, so it's an incredibly important aspect for us. What's becoming increasingly difficult, though, is the amount of data. Yes. So you can get to the point of almost data paralysis. Analysis through paralysis is what we call it sometimes, where you have so much data that you can't actually move forward, because the data now is so inconclusive sometimes that it's hard to make a decision by. So that's one of the increasing challenges we have right now. So the solution is better technology, better algorithms, better ways to do large data set analysis, and actually find trends that even us as humans can't actually detect at this point in time. So a lot of data algorithm analysis is starting to come into play when you have these large data sets and new visualization tools to figure out what is the data telling you, and how do you make a decision then with it. So we're going to increasingly rely on these types of tools and develop new tools as the data that we have increases in size. how do we make all the decisions with uncertain data? So decision making with uncertainty, dealing with a complex problem that we're trying to solve of sending humans in deep space. How do we make decisions today that don't close off future pathways that we may want to do? And we don't know what those are right now, though. So the thing that keeps me up at night is how do we make those near-term decisions that then don't cause us to have bad outcomes in the future? And that outcome could be a decade away. So that's the hardest part of the job, is making those near-term decision makings with a lot of uncertainty. How do you ensure whatever you're trying to do, how are you getting solution spaces from those that you normally don't get them from? So how do you engage not your normal actors in solving your problem? So engagement strategy is to go after your solution space that involves new organizations, new companies, new academia, whoever it is. How do you engage those? The second part I would focus on is it's very, very difficult for humans to understand what is innovative. There's been a lot of literature out there that actually examines our human ability to identify innovative ideas, and we're extremely biased.
Right.
So we typically can't identify things. Actually, the literature says we can't identify things on anything greater than a 30% level of innovative,
Wow.
that's a very stark number. It means that 70% of the time we're ignoring new ideas. So how do you get and set up processes so that you can remove that bias as much as you can to bring those new ideas to the table? The other side of it is it's a new style of leadership. Whether in your industry or in our case at NASA, we're not leading everything. We're actually letting go. The application to brand managers and such, so those that believe that they're in charge of their brand anymore are completely wrong.
Wow.
The brand is owned by your community, your customers, your stakeholders.
Yep.
You're a member of your ownership of your brand. It's how do you embrace kind of that lack of ownership of the brand and go back to that conductor analogy I gave, and you're a conductor of an orchestra that you don't completely have control over. So that's another key aspect of it. The third one I would harp on is that think about how you own your brand, your organization, and the way we operate today is a lot different than in the past. So usually Earth observation, observing phenomena on the Earth, has been a product of governments. Now it's going to be a product of commercial industry. And so governments will buy data, but also commercial industry will be able to utilize basically scans of the Earth every single day and realize those into commercial products. That's going to change the way we think about things, just like GPS has changed the way we do navigation today. The next big hurdle is actually commercial human operations in space. First with suborbital flights. There's several companies going after the suborbital launch market that's mainly tourism driven today,
Right.
but will eventually be research driven and others that as well. And then there'll be expansion of, right now, the only space station that exists is an international space station that was built by the governments around the world. In the next decade or so, there'll be commercially operated space stations. And what does that mean to have this low Earth orbit research lab that helps enable the next breakthroughs in pharma or biology or materials research?